64 people were known to be on the sub when it was lost. The vessel was one of the Royal Navy's most successful World War II subs.
When K-129 quietly vanished into the Pacific, the loss first looked like a tragic malfunction. But when analysts uncovered an acoustic signature that shouldn't have existed, the disappearance shifted from accident to unanswered question. And that single anomaly would push two superpowers toward a recovery mission whose consequences still refuse to settle. The disappearance in the Pacific. When the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 slipped away from Petropavlovsk and disappeared into the vastness of the North Pacific, its departure followed the same disciplined rhythm that had guided countless patrols before it. The crew adhered to strict protocol as they conducted test dives, confirmed system readiness, and transmitted what would become their final routine message home. As days passed without further communication, commanders who had grown accustomed to silence during stealth patrols began to sense that this silence felt heavier than usual because K-129 was expected to re-establish contact at scheduled intervals. When no signal arrived, the Soviet Navy initiated a massive search that spanned more than 1 million square kilometers. Yet the ocean offered no oil slicks, scattered debris, or rising bubbles to guide them toward the truth. Families received sparse updates, officers scoured charts, and ships crisscrossed empty water that revealed nothing except the scale of the mystery forming beneath its surface. While Moscow wrestled with uncertainty, American listening stations quietly reviewed acoustic records from the same day the submarine vanished. Analysts had detected a sharp underwater concussion consistent with an implosion, yet the absence of any physical trace confounded expectations about where such a catastrophic event should have occurred. That widening gap between sound and evidence set the stage for an investigation unlike any attempted during the Cold War. The sound that should not exist. As American analysts continued examining SOSUS recordings from the day K-129 vanished, they noticed a pattern that diverged from every known acoustic profile of a routine submarine failure. The initial implosion signal aligned with expectations for a compromised hull collapsing under deep ocean pressure. Yet, a second, fainter signature appeared only minutes later, suggesting the rapid movement of another submarine departing the area. This anomaly challenged long-standing assumptions about K-129's final moments, because it implied that a separate vessel might have been present when the disaster unfolded, raising questions that neither the Soviet Navy nor the United States could easily explain. The possibility that two submarines intersected in a remote stretch of ocean unsettled strategic planners, who understood how sensitive such incidents were during an era defined by suspicion and nuclear brinkmanship. If the CIA recovered evidence indicating a collision, miscommunication, or covert operation gone wrong, the implications could extend far beyond technical intelligence, because any interpretation pointing toward Soviet responsibility risked escalating diplomatic tensions at a moment when both superpowers sought to maintain deterrent stability. Analysts debated how to interpret the faint signature, yet its presence remained impossible to dismiss, particularly because it came from a hydrophone network known for exceptional precision across the Pacific Basin. This unexplained echo prompted intelligence officials to view the wreck not simply as a tragic loss, but as a potential flashpoint, especially if the recovery revealed information the Soviet Union had tried to conceal. These concerns shaped the urgency behind the next decision, which involved sending a submarine to the abyssal plain to locate the wreck and determine whether the anomaly pointed to an accident, an encounter, or something even more complex. The photographs that changed everything. When the USS Halibut arrived in the North Pacific under a veil of classified orders, its crew understood that their mission demanded a level of precision few submariners had ever attempted. The vessel carried an array of deep ocean reconnaissance tools, including a towed camera sled fitted with high-intensity lights, side-scan sonar, and navigation systems capable of holding position above an unseen world. As the Halibut traced grid patterns across a vast search zone, operators monitored sonar sweeps that revealed nothing but the muted contours of the abyssal plain, reinforcing how improbable it seemed that any wreck could be located in terrain shaped by darkness and pressure. Weeks passed before a distinctive metallic outline finally appeared on their screens, marking the first confirmation that K-129 rested upright nearly 3 miles beneath the surface. Lowering the camera sled toward the seabed revealed a scene that stunned even the most seasoned analysts. The submarine's bow section remained recognizable, but the aft portion had collapsed inward, producing twisted steel that testified to the immense forces exerted during the implosion. Photographs captured torn bulkheads, mangled compartments, and debris fields that spread out like frozen currents, offering silent clues about the violence that ended the patrol. Engineers cataloged each image, noting fracture lines and impact points that suggested structural failure, yet some features hinted at additional stresses inconsistent with a simple descent into crushing pressure. These details gained significance because they could be compared with SOSUS data, including the unexplained secondary acoustic signature. If the wreck's condition aligned with patterns associated with external contact or sudden course alteration, the anomaly might represent more than an isolated echo. These possibilities deepen the operational urgency, setting the foundation for a recovery plan that would demand unprecedented engineering innovation. Building the impossible machine. Once analysts confirmed that K-129 lay intact enough to yield valuable intelligence, the challenge shifted from discovery to recovery, a transition that pushed the boundaries of engineering far beyond anything attempted in peacetime. The CIA assembled a specialized task force, whose members represented disciplines ranging from oceanography to metallurgy, and their earliest assessments concluded that lifting a fragmented submarine from 16,000 feet demanded technology that did not yet exist. Engineers examined conventional salvage proposals involving inflatable chambers, explosive separation, or buoyant frames, yet each approach faltered because the operation required secrecy, stability, and the ability to withstand extraordinary pressure differentials over a vertical ascent of 3 miles. The solution emerged from a concept so ambitious that it initially resembled speculative fiction more than practical engineering: a massive mechanical capture vehicle capable of gripping the submarine's bow and raising it through a continuous string of steel pipe sections. Building such a system required a vessel unlike any in the world, which led to the creation of the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a ship concealed behind a mining cover story and designed with a moon pool that allowed the entire lift to occur within an enclosed chamber, shielded from outside observation. Every critical component, from the dynamic positioning system to the claw's hydraulic array, had to function with near-perfect reliability, because a single point of failure risked tearing the wreck apart or revealing the mission to Soviet surveillance. The unexplained acoustic anomaly added heightened urgency because if another submarine had been present during K-129's final moments, the wreck might contain traces of damage or evidence with geopolitical implications far exceeding technical intelligence value. This reinforced the determination to build machinery capable of performing a lift slowly, precisely, and invisibly, ensuring that whatever secrets remained on the seabed could be retrieved before the ocean or history erased them. The lift, the break, and the haunting discovery. When the Glomar Explorer reached the recovery site and lowered the vast assembly of pipe sections toward the sea floor, the mission entered a phase defined by patience, tension, and the constant risk of mechanical failure. Engineers monitored strain gauges and hydraulic readings as the capture vehicle descended through layers of cold, pressurized water that distorted light and challenged instrumentation. After days of careful maneuvering, cameras illuminated the familiar silhouette of K-129 resting exactly where the halibut had recorded it, allowing operators to guide the mechanical arms around the bow section and lock them into place. The ascent that followed proceeded at a pace measured in inches, not feet, because any sudden movement could introduce torsion strong enough to crack the already fractured hull. Halfway to the surface, enormous stress rippled through the lifting structure as one of the grappling arms failed, sending a large portion of the submarine's midsection and stern plunging back into the abyss. Monitors displayed a chaotic flurry of sediment as the lost section disintegrated upon impact, and for a moment, the entire operation appeared on the verge of collapse, until stabilizers redistributed the load and the remaining fragment held. What eventually emerged into the moon pool was a battered but intact forward compartment that had survived pressure, darkness, and a catastrophic fall. Inside, recovery teams found evidence of sudden destruction: twisted control panels, crushed bulkheads, and debris patterns consistent with intense internal forces. Among these artifacts lay the remains of several crew members whose bodies, preserved by cold and pressure, testified to the violence of the submarine's final moments. Analysts examined structural damage for patterns that might correspond with the unexplained acoustic signature, assessing whether certain fracture lines reflected internal failure alone or hinted at external impact. These observations carried weight because they offered rare forensic clues about what occurred in the minutes before K-129 imploded, deepening the mystery that had defined the mission from the beginning. The echo that never faded. As analysts reviewed the recovered components from the bow section, they recognized that the fragments offered only a partial narrative. Yet even this incomplete record contained patterns that challenged earlier assumptions about the disaster. Metallurgical inspections revealed stress points consistent with rapid compression, but certain shear marks and angular deformations aligned more closely with abrupt directional forces rather than a simple uncontrolled descent. These subtleties gained importance because they could be compared against acoustic data, particularly the faint secondary signature that suggested another submarine leaving the area shortly after the implosion. Intelligence officers debated whether this indicated an accidental encounter, a misinterpreted maneuver, or an unrelated vessel whose presence happened to coincide with the tragedy. The CIA's internal reports acknowledged that some findings could not be publicly disclosed without provoking diplomatic strain, especially if structural anomalies raised questions the Soviet Union was unwilling to answer. As a result, official statements emphasized technical intelligence gains rather than the deeper uncertainties that remained unresolved. Over the following decades, retired engineers, naval officers, and acoustic specialists revisited the data through updated modeling, often concluding that the unexplained signature deserved more scrutiny than it received at the time, because it represented the only independent clue to events predating the implosion. This lingering ambiguity ensured that K-129's story never settled into a single interpretation, instead evolving into a reminder of how Cold War secrets, once submerged, rarely resurface in complete form, leaving echoes that continue to influence historical memory and strategic analysis. If you want more investigations into hidden operations, Cold War secrets, and the stories history tried to bury, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video. Stay curious, explore boldly, and join us for the next deep dive into the unknown.